There's another thing that I'm inspired by that I think most people probably wouldn't find necessarily inspiration from, but it's people that go through great trials and tribulations. There's an atheist in Indonesia right now. His name is Alexander Aan, and he's in prison for posting on Facebook that he was an atheist. He's in prison for the next 2.5 years, and he was also fined large sums of money, unfortunately. Indonesia has laws that allow them to, put these sorts of people in jail. And what I'm inspired by is the fact that Alexander is in jail in Indonesia. He's been in jail for a couple months now. And he's in the worst possible situation. He's in a country that is not welcoming to atheists. He's in a prison cell in a prison population that's even less welcoming of atheists. In fact, we've heard reports that he's been beaten. And yet he finds some way to stay positive. He's written, letters and told his supporters that he's trying to stay upbeat, and that the letters that we're sending him are helping him stay that way. And he's writing letters back to us saying that, I'm happy. It's a really bad situation, but I'm trying to stay happy. That gives me a lot of inspiration to know that someone, as senseless as it is to me, is in jail, sitting in jail for being an atheist, essentially, and yet has not torn himself apart over it, is not raging and foaming at the mouth, but is trying to stay calm and trying to find some way to get through this, and perhaps even use this experience of his as an example of why laws that restrict, say, criticism of religion or dissent from religion need to go. That's inspiring to me because I get to wake up in the Western Hemisphere. I don't have to worry about any sort of morality police or wars on the border, and I get to get dressed every morning and eat my breakfast, and everything's fine. This guy's in jail in Indonesia. He's going to be there for at least 2 more years, and yet he's not despondent. He's not totally without hope, and so that gives me inspiration. Not just in that I should do my job to try to prevent cases like that from happening, but just to get up in the morning, just to know that there are people out there really struggling, but that are trying to make the best of it. One of the things we've been doing is actually holding protests, real live protests outside of the Indonesian embassy in DC, outside of the consulate office in New York City. And it was actually a great story. When we were in New York, we're outside protesting, and of course the police show up just to kind of ask what's going on. Do you expect it to get much bigger than this? How long is it going to go on? Post-Occupy, they're a little bit more cautious of this stuff, but they're especially cautious if you're going outside of an embassy office or something like that, right? One of the cops asked us, what is this all about? And so I told him the story of Alexander and said everything that happened, and he said, how do you know this guy? And I kind of looked at him confused. Well, what do you mean? I told you, I read the news reports. And he goes, no, how do you know him? How does anyone here know him? I said, well, actually, we don't know him. I've never met him before. I've never been to Indonesia. I could point to it on a map, but I've never been there, so I've never met him, nor have I ever talked to him on the phone. And the police officer was shocked. He just couldn't understand why 12, 15 people were outside of an office in New York City protesting for someone who was halfway across the world who they had never met before. And I think the reason is because we could put ourselves in his shoes in some way. We're, grateful over here to have these freedoms to express our thoughts and express our concerns about religion. And many people around the world don't have those freedoms. And when you see someone kind of in your age group, really nice, kind guy, just expressing some doubts about religion and gets thrown in jail for that, I think that a lot of people felt some emotional impact from that. And so that's why we were out there on the streets in New York protesting. And it was just interesting that the cop, just had no understanding of that, and later told me that he just wasn't really down with the whole thing that we were doing. But yeah, it was an amazing experience.